Yeah, hello, right? Good morning, afternoon, evening, night, and whenever you watch this video or podcast, I guess. So, in this video or podcast, or whatever you want to call it, I will explain not exactly my thesis that titled Ideological Construction on Java Post News Report about DBL East Java Series 2012, written by Dimas Alif Akbar from Sasing 2014. This thesis aims to reveal the ideological construction of news reports on DBL East Java series in Java Post. Since Java Post is a huge newspaper in Indonesia and work together with DBL as organizer, Java Post takes a role in constructing public assumption for certain issue. Thus, this paper used critical discourse analysis by Van Dijk, which is born from discourse analysis, as his theory to analyze Java Post assumption towards DBL event, and also used sociocognitive as his approach to select the data. For the rest of minutes of this video, we will deal with some keywords which are ideological construction, critical discourse analysis, sociocognitive approach, newspaper, and development basketball league or DBL. Therefore, I have collected 5 articles for related study that might help the writer in this thesis to construct his literature review and might relate it to his thesis. Okay, let's jump into the first article. Okay, my first article is titled Unveiling the Ideological Construction of 2004 Irish Citizenship Referendum, a Critical Discourse Analytical Approach, written by Sylvia Brandy, dated in 2007, issue 1, and in second edition of Translocation Journal. The main objective in this article is to examine ideological construction of the referendum that said by Minister of Justice, Equality and Law Reform Michael McDowell in 2004. The main issue in this article is this Irish referendum has a big percentage of yes vote, but the writer thought it was suspicious on it because it is implicitly stated a racism ideology that has been naturalized and generalized. Racism, but I mean that there is a policy in that referendum to not acknowledge a child that born in Ireland from foreign mother or parents. This article took 6 data that consists of 3 statements, 2 speech, and 1 newspaper, and this article has 7 findings. The first finding is the representation of the referendum as a simple and urgent technical issue, which did not warrant much public thinking and consultation. For example, the minister has stated in text 1 that debate proceeds on the basis of true understanding of the facts. By saying and using word true in here, the minister is indirectly said that all the opponents are providing a false understanding of the facts. Second finding is the process of naturalization confirmed the construction of immigration into Ireland as a problem to be addressed and controlled, mean that the immigrant that live in Ireland is acknowledged as a cause of crisis economy in Ireland. Third finding is polarization between two antithetical categories of non-national, the good deserving ones and the bad undeserving ones. Those to be departed was extrapolated from the textual analysis, means that in here, non-national refers to the immigrant which divided into good and bad ones. Fourth finding is particular definition of what it is to be racist and who is to be considered as a racist were naturalized. In here we could see that the Irish government or the minister does not want to look as a racist, but it is implicitly stated in the referendum. Fifth finding is political and intellectual opponents were dismissed and portrayed as unreasonable and extremist. and thus as referents who do not deserve a hearing in democratic process of political consultation. In here we could see that the minister wants to all Irish citizens, even though they are politicians, to accept his referendum. The sixth finding is in McDowell's construction of the referendum, the recurrent deployment of a number of discursive strategies can be detected. The strategies are 1. There were shifting lexical choices and definition of the problem. 2. The discursive strategy of the ideological square was resorted to quite consistently. 3. The consistent strategic usage of quotation pattern was detected. Last finding is the consistent strategic usage of quotation patterns was detected. According to the referendum, the government is trying to not be racist, but implicitly they exclude non-national or immigrant or foreigner that signified by certain words. Now let's jump to similarity and differences. The similarity between my thesis and this article is both of them are using critical discourse analysis as their approach, and both of them aim to examine ideological construction behind their data. The difference is this article took the data from political referendum. The topic in this article is mostly about politics. Meanwhile, my thesis took the data from newspaper, Jawa Post, and mostly talk about Jawa Post and GBL. My second article is titled The Spirit of Democracy, Ideological Construction of the 2008 Australian Apology Speech, written by Dayana Griwijaya in 2016. This article has published in International Conference on Language, Literary, and Cultural Studies by Icon Laterals. The main issue in this article is on 13th of February 2008, the Prime Minister Kevin Rudd delivered his apology speech to the public in Australia. Kevin Rudd accepted that in the past their political people stolen more than 100,000 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander when they were had Aboriginal Protection Act from 1910 until 1970s. Therefore, the aim of this article is tries to figure out the ideological construction behind Kevin Rudd's apology speech. This article found two types of ideological construction of personal cognition and social cognition between 24 data preceding the textual analysis. 15 data are constructed by the social cognition in the mind of the speaker, but the other 9 data are constructed by the personal cognition. In other words, the researcher found 3 findings, which are social cognition, personal cognition, and ideologies. The first sample is datum 1. The researcher found 3 types of textual analysis. Those are schematic structure, syntactic sentence structure, and semantics. Firstly, the speaker or Prime Minister Kevin Rudd has proximity or closeness between him and the object, or the indigenous people of the land. Secondly, the speaker puts himself as a subject rather than an object in a sentence. Finally, this datum has an unclearly word and an abstract phrase like "we" and indigenous people of this land. This is really difficult to understand without contextual comprehension. The word "we" refers to Australian government. The phrase could refer to the native people of Australia, namely Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander. The second sample is datum 15. The researcher found the analysis of schematic structure. The speaker tends to promote the voice from the subaltern. He uses the He uses the confession of the woman's story. He argues that the woman's story needs to be reconsidered. The woman is a member of the stolen generation. Datum 19, the researcher found two types of textual analysis. Those are schematic structure and rhetoric. The speaker describes that the past government takes on the political mistreatment over a decade. They could not distinguish the right and the wrong. Datum 24, the researcher found two types of textual analysis. Those are schematic and structure semantics. The duty on apology is delivered. Therefore, they want to push legislative to go further on constitution. This tendency is called by schematic structure. Moreover, there are some abstract phrases like this commission, first Australians, long-standing platform commitment, and my party. Those need to understand semantically. The first refers to the Committee of Indigenous People Reconciliation. Second deals with the indigenous people of Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Island. The third represents roadmap of the reconciliation. The study also found 6 ideologies in 24 data of the 2008 Australian apology speech, which are 13 data indicating the ideology of democracy, a datum showing the ideology of Labour Party, that is democratic socialism, 3 data indicating the ideology of humanism, 4 data showing the ideology of historicism, 2 data indicating the ideology of hegemony, a datum showing the ideology of cultural universalism. The ideology of historicism also leads Ruth to legitimate his position through the explanation of the past political mistreatment. The ideology of hegemony shapes Ruth's mind that he is the leader of the government. However, he tries to argue that there was no choice to have a religious freedom. They ignore any belief of Aboriginal society. In this sense, Ruth realizes that the cultural universalism. Okay. Now, the similarities between my thesis and this article are both of them use critical discourse analysis to examine the ideological construction in news. Both of the data analyze written text, but the differences is my thesis is talking about basketball and newspaper. Meanwhile, this article is talking about political speech and the document. My third article is titled Ideology and Political Discourse, a critical discourse analysis of Erdogan's political speech, written by Fatih Bayram, 2010, Volume 7 of ARE/CLS Journal. The main issue in this article is the controversial short speech that given by Prime Minister Erdogan during a debate with Israel's President Shimon Peres in World Economic Forum in Davos 2009. This article aims to examine the impact of identity and linguistic background on Prime Minister Erdogan's political discourse and the ideological components of his speech. This article has 3 findings. First, Erdogan demonstrated a good example of attitude and identity construction through his use of language. Second, the second important point in the Prime Minister talk was his biblical references, a quote from the Old Testament. The last issue to be discussed is how Turkish people perceive Erdogan's reaction in the debate. The similarity between my thesis and this article is both of them use qualitative method and critical discourse analysis as their approach, but the differences are the theme that used in both papers. My thesis talks about basketball and newspaper and the data taken from written text. Meanwhile, this article talks about politics and more to political discourse analysis and the data taken from video or speech. My fourth article is titled "The Ideological Construction of Iran in the New York Times or NYT," written by Mariam Jahedi and Faisati Abdullah, 2012, volume 32 in Australian Journal of Linguistics. The main issue of this article is how Iran and Iranians were depicted by the New York Times in relation to two key events: the Iranian hostage crisis of 1979 until 1980 and the Iran presidential election in 2009, and the discourses that surrounded them, which represented two periods that appear to generate a wealth of newsworthy events about post-Islamic Republic Iran for the news media in question. The article aims to examine how systemic structure and properties of language play a role in the portrayal of the Iranian nation and to provide insight into how the information presented in the news text had ideological implications. This article has three findings based on the transitivity analysis, thematization, and lexicalization. The transitivity analysis showed that participants were attributed different actor roles as a function of underlying attitudes and ideologies. In other words, the Iranian participants constructed as the agent of negative action produced a negative picture of them and thus had an ideological basis. Furthermore, through verbal processes, the Iranians' anti-American attitudes were highlighted to portray them as a threat to U.S. security. Okay, second finding is the examination of thematization showed that noun phrase, adjective, and adverbial phrases which occupied theme position highlighted the negative action by Iranian participants, which helped intensify the negative representation of Iran. Third finding is the lexicalization found that the New York Times news discourse about Iran emphasized the concept of problematic situation, extremism, anti-democracy, and animosity towards the U.S. Lexical items used to describe and identify Iranian social actors reproduce a negative image of them, which most probably led readers to perceive the nation of Iran negatively. The similarity between my thesis and this article are both of them use critical discourse analysis as their approach and theory. Both of them taken data in newspaper or written text, but the difference is on their topic. My thesis is talking about basketball, meanwhile this article is talking about representation of Iran in the US. They also use different methods. In my thesis, use socio-cognitive approach. Meanwhile, this article used the transitivity analysis, examination of thematization, and lexicalization. Okay, finally we are in the last article. My last article is titled Ideological Construction in column titles by two age groups in the Philippines. Implication in language teaching and learning. Implication in language teaching and learning, written by Nicanor Quinto, 2013, volume 2 of International Journal of Research Studies in Language Learning. The main issue in this article is, through the years, there is no doubt that contributors of the column have constructed, if not continuously constructing, an ideological image of the two polar age through the young blood and high blood columns. The ideological image may have unconsciously been integrated in the teaching and learning process in the Philippines, further legitimizing an identity of their group in the process. The aim of this article is to discover ideological construction in column titles by contributors of Philippines Daily Inquirers or PDI, Young Blood and High Blood columns. Okay, this article has 3 findings based on process type analysis, lexicalization analysis, and the ideological image. First finding, process type analysis. The result indicates that young blood contributors tend to prefer processes which represent the concept of doing. This means that the kind of experience that they usually want to tell the world is something that pertains to tangible action. The result indicates that high blood contributors prefer to tell the world that just like the youth, despite their age, they could still do a lot of things contrary to the stereotype of old age. Lexicalization analysis. The result significantly notes that the young column writers portray themselves positively as goal-oriented, advantage-driven, and assertive, and negatively as weak, frustrated, and dependent. Okay, the result point out that contrary to the stereotypical belief of frailty that comes with old age, writers of the high blood present themselves among their readers as somebody who still have the energy to do things which people around them may not expect for the elderly to be capable of doing. Third result, ideological image. It can be noted in the table that both young and old contributors in the column share a similar choice of process type in their column titles, which is indicative of their attempt to express a kind of experience which narrates concrete, real, and tangible action. This simply means that the two discourse groups are engaged in physical activities that may require physiological stability and or overall physical fitness. Okay, the similarity between this article and my thesis are both of them took written data from newspaper, and also they have similar aim, which is try to examine ideological construction in newspaper. But the difference is this paper do not use critical discourse analysis as their approach, but they use the same method as my previous article did, which is Zahedi and Abdullah's article. So the conclusion of this literary review is to conclude, I think even though it is not literary my thesis, this thesis is a novel because when we are using critical discourse analysis, some researchers always thought about political discussion. Meanwhile, this thesis is different among related studies that I have explained. Rather talk about politics, this thesis talk about DBL and their basketball instead. Okay, maybe that's all from me. If you have any question, please write down in the forum discussion in e-learning UNER. And see ya.